I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. No, I'm not in the home studio, as you can probably tell. I am in the hotel. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah, that's the site of the regional, Texas Southern University in Kansas. I'll be at the game, so I'll be able to give you some insight. In fact, I was in Dayton. Yes, I got to see the first four and see Texas Southern University and SWAC get it done. So we'll get you a little bit of insights on that. I have my guest from the other side, from the sports rap. That is Bryan and AD, showing me some love as the other two guys, they're out on assignment. You know, they've been just shucking and jiving with the drive. I don't know what's going on. I think I'm going to have to up my pay scale. You know, I guess these adjunct professor fees are just not high enough for them, and they got other assignments, as they said. I just don't understand. So before we get into the introduction formula, let me just ask. Let me start with you, Drew. First, let's say condolences to you and your family. And the way that I'll ask this question certainly is not indicative of where your heart is. So with everything being considered, I hope that you are being able to navigate this space, and we're here for you in terms of however we can be.
Yes, appreciate it, Doc. You know, I was on the plane flying into St. Louis today, where we memorialize my baby sister on tomorrow. When obviously, you know, when you touch down, your phone, you get all your missed calls and text messages start coming through. And the first one that came through was from you, asked me if I minded coming on today. And of course, obviously, you know, while I was traveling, and then I was thinking to myself, I was like, if I could get to a time and a place where I can log on, you know, I'll be more than happy to come on, because, you know, like Bryan and I talked about on Sunday, you know, sometimes you need life's distractions, because reality is going to hit when I wake up tomorrow when we go through the services. So it's just great. I like coming home every now and then, just under better circumstances than they are right now. So thank you for allowing me to take 1 hour or so out of my day and get back to doing what I really love to do, talk about HBCU sports.
Absolutely. With that said, let's dedicate a great show in her honor. With that, yeah. Bryan, how are you doing today?
Well, Doc, I'm on location as I have had to scramble all over the Altamont Springs, North Orlando area just to be able to find some place that wasn't inundated with folks celebrating St. Patrick's Day and the day one of the tournament. I would like to say, you know, my brackets are going well. My other stuff ain't going so well. The home internet is a mess, but you know, life, man. You know, so I'm okay. I'm good. That's about all I can say. You know, I'm good. I'm blessed.
Well, we appreciate it, and we certainly know that you'll be coming in and out in terms of the mute button there. But we understand if we see you with that green beer, we'll understand that you were just telling us all of this stuff as you know it. And AD, you probably know Bryan better than most of us, so you certainly know that he chooses his battles wisely. So he snuck around to make sure you can see the game, get in there. He's like, hey, yeah, I can be there, but I got to do what I got to do. It's like, I like that. So you're in the spirit, you know, whatever it is. So let me officially.
Like we're all traveling professors today.
Yeah,
everybody's on the road today.
Exactly. Let me officially welcome all the lab listeners in here. Welcome to episode 246 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. the show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and the HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. My co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and as I said, standing in from them are visiting Professor Bryan Fulford, visiting Professor A.D. Drew. Drew is more than a visiting professor. We got him into the clinical rotation, as you know now. He's just a regular. So, Bryan, we're gonna tell you to get your game up. And again, if we see you sneaking with that green beard, we're gonna have some problems. Now, do what you gotta do. Today's episode of Inside HBCU.
Sweet tea right now. Sweet tea.
Water. That's water. That's water. Let's keep it real. That's water. I promise it's water.
Yeah, I was like, that's mighty red. So I instead of green. But hey, who's telling? We celebrate how we want to celebrate. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THE Agency LLC. THE Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. My first story is going to be I want to speak of. I know we got plenty of time to get into this basketball updates, and I'll ask you to share what you like after this. But I want to give a shout out to Jackson State's Ashley Robinson, who was named NACDA, NACDA, Athletic Director of the Year. And they do it for different levels, but at the FCS level, and hard to argue in terms of what he's done with Jackson State, the hires, more than that, just winning at the program and putting Jackson State in front of everybody. Certainly well-deserved. People may remember that he was the athletic director for Mississippi Valley State for a short while, and then he came over to Prairie View before coming over, going back home in a lot of ways for him to Jackson. So I've kept up with his career before that. He was in the MEAC, SWAC conference offices, if you would, doing great work there. And so he continues to shine. I got a chance to talk with him a little bit over there in Birmingham and share some insights. And boy, I tell you, Jackson State and SWAC are on the move in many different ways, with him leading the athletic directors, vice presidents of athletics from the chairmanship. And obviously Jackson State are excited about what he's doing for that program, including now bringing in Mo Williams from Alabama State on the men's basketball side. So that'll be interesting to follow. I'm going to stick with you, A.D. Drew. What are some of the hot news that you want to share today?
Well, you already came with the lead in, Dr. Cavil. Mo Williams switches to another SWAC East team, going to his hometown, Jackson State Tigers. I remember when we interviewed Mo shortly after he took the job at Alabama State, and he basically stated that he grew up on Jackson State's campus, obviously playing for the University of Alabama for his collegiate career. And I guess he's gotten a taste of the HBCU life from the administration side and the coaching side, and has decided to go back and to try to take the team that he grew up rooting for in his hometown to another level. Mo Williams, NBA champion, Jackson native, graduate of Mourn High School in Jackson, Mississippi. We know he most recently coached at Alabama State. Prior to that, he was at Cal State Northridge as an assistant, 14-year NBA career. And let's just talk about some of the accolades. He was Mr. Basketball during his senior year at Mourn. He was a high school All-American, McDonald's All-American, Parade Magazine third team All-American. That's just a high school resume right
nice.
there. Mm-hmm. All right. Played at Alabama for 2 seasons. Was named Sporting News National Freshman of the Year and SEC Freshman of the Year in 2002. Had an SEC regular season championship while at Alabama in the NCAA appearance. And he was a third team all conference in 2003 before turning pro. So the coaching shuffle just is not limited to football when it comes to SWAC. We saw this recently with between Prairie View and Southern, with Eric Dooley going home to Southern. Now we see Mo Williams going from Alabama State to Jackson State, quote unquote, going home.
Man, great points. And I'm glad that you brought up his background and went all the way to high school, because we focus on him as being a pro, or certainly a coach at Alabama State. It's been a short stint that you haven't really got a chance to maybe see what he can do. But, man, that was some significant accolades, and certainly Alabama not known for basketball. The fact that he was able to win a championship there says something about his playing side of it. So be fascinating to see what he can do. I've already seen that he's landed 2 recruits that are supposed to be pretty strong. So it looks like he's off to a good start. It'll be fascinating to see how that looks. Obviously, now you have 2 professional players as head coach. You have a strong baseball program. Women's basketball is doing this thing as they get prepared to play this weekend against LSU as a 14 seed, highest seed that you've seen from a SWAC program, one of the highest you've seen at the Division I for women's. I think the other one obviously was Hampton when they got a 13 seed under Davis 6, in the early 2000s or late 2000s, I should say. So a lot of good things going on with Jackson, including the fact, before I take it to Bryan, hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder, is the fact that Jackson State football spring game will be on ESPN. Yeah, a spring game. HBCU wise will be on ESPN. So maybe I'm not stealing Bryan's thunder because he's like, whatever, give me some more stuff. But Jackson State doing their thing. Let's shift over there. Maybe we get some FAMU news in here from Bryan. What do you want to share?
Doc, I'm still buzzing about basketball. Basketball, look, I know there's a lot of talk about HBCUs and being in the first 4. And I know maybe that's a conversation we'll get into later. But seeing Texas Southern play and then Howard the next night, that warmed my heart, seeing Texas Southern just ball out in the second half, and they did it in such an impressive fashion. Just in terms of the number of shots they made in the paint, it was a little. I pulled a few hairs out. Might have had a few choice words, but they went to the basket any and every time they wanted to. The young man, Grisham. They put on. There should be a montage of the blocks that Texas Southern put on in that game against Texas A&M-Corpus Christi. And I know one of the chase down blocks made a Sports Center top 10, but I'll tell you, there was a block that Grisham made, Doc, where he went up at the same time the ball handler from Corpus Christi went up. And while the kid from Texas A&M-Corpus Christi was coming down, I swear Grisham was still hanging in the air, and he blocked the shot. He could have blocked the shot with both hands. It was one of the most outstanding. I had my mouth on the floor twice on some of his blocks, and I just kept thinking, that's what FAMU needs. But anyway, it was just amazing watching Texas A&M, especially at the free throw line. They iced that game at the free throw line. They shot something like 15 or 21. Good teams win at the free throw line, and they win in the paint. I don't know what Texas Southern's going to do against Kansas, but they showed something in that first 4, and I think now that's the third first 4 win for Texas Southern, and that means a lot. And then for Howard's women got a 55-51 win over Incarnate. That was a team who hadn't been in the tournament in 20-something years gets the first win of the tournament. That's big. So I think more folks need to appreciate and celebrate those accomplishments. And while we look for, I would say, less complaining and more understanding about how the system works, and then maybe we can start to ask the question, why and how do we get our conferences to have a better rating so that we don't end up in the first 4 games and we don't end up as 16 seeds and end up having to play Baylor like Norfolk State did. And, Norfolk State probably played a good game. Baylor played a great game. People look at the statistics today. I think Baylor was like 31 or 50 something from the field. It's hard to beat anybody. And I know Norfolk State has beaten some teams when they have shot 31 or 50 something from the field. So it just is one of those days, and today seems to be one of those chalky days on day one of the tournament where the high seeds or the favorite seeds are winning. And so that's just how it is. So that's my thoughts today so far.
Yeah, we did get that 12-5 upset that seems to always happen with Richmond, but to your point, everything else has been chalk. Norfolk State obviously ran into a buzzsaw. That is the remaining champion, Baylor of 2021. Obviously, they lost pieces, but they regained and they basically are reloading at this point. But even you talking about Longwood than a lot of folks, and they got the better seed. They got beat up by 30-some points as well. So, it's just tough being in that low major, one bid type of conferences, even no matter what the seed. It's tough until you get maybe to that 12. You may want to think something about the 13, but basically, statistics even wise, you need to get to that 12, 11 seed, which is a major jump in terms of not only winning in terms of your number of wins in the 20, but also the quality of your wins. And to some degree, you almost really have to double down with the conference having some strength to itself. So it is a work in progress. I had an article that's out of the New York Times where I got to chop it up a little bit and talk about equality and equity, do some things in there. Also was quoted in the one line, but during the speech, interview I had, I talked about the fact that, it's a mix in terms of HBCUs. Some people, administrators, even some fans to some degree, like the idea of playing in the first four because you're playing a team that's at your level. And so there's a chance to win. And then obviously you add on, if you get a chance to win, you get the money side of it. Then you also have a lot of other folks that, just get tired of the mindset of hearing that you're 16 and you're the 16-1 because they know what this look like, and even to some degree the 15-2. So it's going to be a fascinating. We're going to take a pause here, and then when we come back, it seems like AD wants to get a piece of that about the tournament, so certainly we'll allow him to share that before we get into the poll ranking and get your thoughts on that. So let's take our first break out of the first quarter. We'll come back and get a little more dialogue and see what some other folks talk about. Also, as you talked about Texas Southern, how well they played, they have a change on the women's side coming with Texas Southern University legendary Hall of Fame Cynthia Cooper-Dyke announces her retirement as she is hanging it up, the whistle. Obviously, she hanged up the basketball shoot many years ago, now the whistle. And it's my understanding, just the grind of trying to get it done on the basketball coach a little bit. So she's going to take a break off. I'm not sure if this is going to be the end of a legendary career, even as a SWAC coach in terms of what she's able to do. But certainly at this time, it looks like she's going to hang it up just in terms of getting a break and moving in a different direction. We'll take a break and we'll come back right after this and get it into the poll rankings, get thought AD in terms of maybe what he thinks in terms of a little bit about this poll madness that people have out there in terms of 16 seed or better, where you at, RPI rankings and all those things. And, Bryan and AD are the experts of understanding the computer rankings. So anybody does, I get my little polls, but they break it down on Sunday. So make sure you check out those shows regularly Sundays and Wednesdays as they get it done. With that, we'll be right back after this break.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon. So now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable. That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you, all of you.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. Let me jump right back to Professor Drew over here. I know you wanted to get some thoughts in terms of the first four, 15 seed, 16 seed. Where do you chime in, especially as previous being a coach? What are your thoughts in terms of those kind of matchups?
First of all, if you want to go deep behind the analytics, like Dr. Cavil said, go back and watch the show Bryan and I did live on Sunday as the teams were coming out. You know, we really got into the net rating. Now, what goes into the net rating? We still don't understand what goes into it, the full formula, but we know the NCAA uses it to seed these teams. And based on the numbers of the net rating system, you could pretty much see the snake, as they like to call it, the snake line as they seeded these teams. And if those are not familiar with that snake, you know, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you put 5 in there with 4, 6, 7, 8. So 8 is in there with 1 as you do your seeding. If you look at those top 16 teams, the 4 seeds in each of the 4 regions, and you look at the nets of those teams, those are the top 16 teams as far as net goes. And now let's take this to the other side. If you look at the bottom, Texas Southern was rated number 67. Texas A&M-Corpus Christi was rated number 68. That means they were relegated to the first 4, which is where you saw them at. Norfolk State was number 64. That means they're a 16 seed. They just missed the cut line for the first 4, as 65 through 68 played in the first 4. So we have to understand this stuff and go behind the numbers and understand why these teams are seeded. And like Bryan says, it's up to the athletic directors to figure out what they need to do to make their team get more wins in quadrant 1. Well, a lot of our teams won't get wins in quadrant 1. You know, you saw Texas Southern with its win in quadrant 1 with against Florida. But let's be real, that was the exception. That's not the rule. But there's no reason we can't get pick up a win or 2 in quadrant 2 and win in 3 and 4. The problem is our conferences, the SWAC and the MEAC, rated number 30 and 32. Why are they rated number 30 and 32? Because every team in those conferences are in quadrant 4. And quadrant 4, out of the 32 conferences, every game that was played in the SWAC or the MEAC was a quad 4 game. Also, as an administrator, I want that first 4 opportunity because I get an opportunity to get an extra share. Because every game that you play in the NCAA tournament, you get money. You get rewarded financially, whether you win or whether you lose. Now, the win gives you the opportunity to play again, which means you get paid a second time. So Texas Southern, win or lose, when they step back on the court, we'll pick up 2 shares. Norfolk only picked up 1 share by being that 16 seed, whereas last year, as a first 4 participant, they were able to pick up 2 shares. 2 shares means more money for the conference, more money for Norfolk State. So not only do we need to go behind the numbers, we need to go behind the economics of this also.
I'm really glad that you brought that up because it is extremely important. Because there's another study that was done a while back, and it's called the Red Line. And what this study showed that 75% of the time or more, teams at this red line, which was a financial line, won like 75% of their games against other opponents. And it was a threshold that you had to spend like $1 million as a program, and I forgot, it was like 5 million as a conference or something. And I'm sure that has increased as well. So to your point, it's not just that the ADs and coaches need to figure out what to do. I think in a lot of ways they know what to do, but this is America. And when I say America, it is about capitalism and it's about money. If you look at any of these teams, whether it's in the sport of football or basketball, generally speaking, teams and conferences that spend the most money win most of the time until they face up another team that spends about equally as much. And then it may come down to some coaching, or it may come down to even more so, obviously, Jimmy's and Joe's. But generally speaking, it's about money. So it's about finding that extra money, whether it's support from alumni, digging in their pockets a little more, finding creative ways, well as the commissioner, Dr. Charles McCullum, is doing when he's pushing hard to get the support, looking at television deals that look like they're on the way in regards to finding financial windfalls that will increase the budget in member institutions, in this case the SWAC, but really in any level, or even at the Division II level, CIAA, SIEC. The more money that you can bring into the institution or to the athletic department, generally speaking, the more money you can spend on your programs and the better chance you're going to have to win. So it's understanding the formula, but it gets really simple in a lot of ways. It's about access to resources. And that's why I talked about in that study was equality versus equity. Equality says that you have a seat at the table. Equity says, is it fair in where you are? If you have institutions that have started from the front for 20, 30 years and have got these mega resources deals, yeah, now they can say, let's be equal. We're going to share you a share and put you at the table. But you got Big Ten getting 20 shares because they're putting in 7, 8 teams. Several of those teams are going multiple rounds, and it just pulls up the cover. So when you look at the spreadsheet for the NCAA in terms of their money for the NCAA, like 90% of the money is going to 5, 6 conferences. So it just replicates itself because now you have money and you have resources to put resources into things, whether it's facilities or getting more manpower or paying money to figure out the system a little more, or making sure you get home games. So it's usually more essential. For example, when we were in Dayton, it was a great atmosphere. And in the second half, the Dayton Arena, which is a first-class arena, and this is just for what some people say mid-major, they in Atlantic 10, so it's charting up. Some people may even call it the seventh major division in terms of basketball, outside of the West Coast Conference with Gonzaga out there in Big East, outside of those 5, in terms of what they spend on basketball related, because they don't play, football in terms of scholarship level. And it was full with Indiana fans just for an open round game in a 16,000 seat plus stadium. And they were loud. And they talked about those block parties, but you can tell they appreciate their basketball. Oh, they were cheering and woeing and wooing all up and down when they seen Texas Southern with the chase down block. They went crazy in there. You like, wow. And the players got to stay over a little bit and see the next game, which was Wyoming and Indiana. And the atmosphere in terms of Indiana, how they turn that into essentially a home crowd and how they go about their chants is something that we need to understand in terms of elevating every side of HBCU sports. And this is not to turn it into a complaint session, but to inform people of what that looks like. We're almost on our break, so we're going to go ahead and get into the break, and we're going to push this back a little bit. We might have a surprise guest in here on this next hour. We'll get a chance to get into the poll rankings because I want to see what the gentlemen here think about my poll rankings. Dr. Ville's inside the HBCU Sports Lab. I want to see what the lab listeners think about my rankings in terms of what they are, because we're closing out and we're going to name a champion in terms of as everything starts to close out some of these final games at the Division I level. We want to see who is at the top of the heap and who may be closest to taking that next step if they can maintain that program. Even when you talk about Norfolk State coach talking about not wanting to be in that 16th seed, and you can see why today. Not because he knows that it's challenging, but he probably believes that his program play better than that. But you got to understand all these pieces. So stick with us. We'll be right back at this break. Great information being displayed and great commentary coming out of our lab listeners. Shout out to Stephen A. Miller that talked about Dayton loves hosting those first 4 games. No doubt about it. They're in there doing it well. Anthony Johnson checking us out. Edwin Dwight Moore, Karen Griffin is always showing us love. Chad Cooper's in the building. G. Boom Holly, Amos Fawcett, Aggie's in here doing it big. Noelle Price, she's always showing us love. Lonnie Shaw just got off the golf course to show us some love. Appreciate that. Put in 17 holes. I see you. Donna Glover is in here. LaShawn Harris. Many of them, and know Michael Ford. Appreciate all you all joining us today, getting prepared before we check out some of this basketball tonight. Stickers, we'll be right back after this break.
2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties. Through its programs, Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and parenting education coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
I'm returning to Clinton Parish, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Parish, we take the pain out of being hurt.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry. Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it. Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon'.
This is Dr. Neal inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. They're out on assignment. So I got the next best group of guys. We got one of the original founders back on here, Ryan McGinty, who helped start the show way back. We got in here as the Sports Information Director at Texas Southern University. So you can give us some updated news. And obviously we got the team from Sports Rap, Brian and AD, showing me some love. So I appreciate it. As everybody you see is out on assignment, but we're here to bring you your show like none other. Let me start with you, Ryan. How are things going? What is your experience getting on the charter plane NCAA? I know you've done a little bit of it before, but the Dayton experience, maybe not quite like this in terms of the first four. How has been your experience? What are your thoughts in terms of all this? Share a little bit of the insight with the listeners out there, what this has been like for you.
Well, as funny as it sounds, I've been in this business since 2002, and this is my first men's basketball NCAA tournament, as crazy as it sounds. And so I've done 2 women's on the side, but as a lot of people know, the women's first round games are on campus. But the second time I did a women's game, we did do charter, and we flew to UConn. And so this was my first time winning. Last year I couldn't go because of the bubble situation, and the sports got pushed back in the spring. So I missed all the tournament experience last year. But this is my first legitimate NCAA tournament experience on the men's side, and I'm enjoying every minute of it, from the charter flights to lack of sleep to catering meals in the hotel. I said, so you can get spoiled like this. I plan on going back 20, 30 more times. So I'm just glad I'm here to enjoy this experience with Coach Jones and team. And you really get a chance to see the people in a different light. And it's just an amazing experience once again. I'm just glad, they brought me along because, I didn't have to. I mean, they didn't have to bring me, but they thought well enough of me to bring me along, and just enjoying the time. And this is an experience, you'll cherish forever, because no day is promised, especially in this sport and in this business, especially some teams I know is yet to make an NCAA tournament. So I'm taking full advantage of this.
Man, you were at Grambling. Why you throw that out there?
I didn't say that.
No, that was me. My Grambling fan, y'all don't do that. And see, I'm ready to go. We're going to get through the show, and then we're going to have to head out there to the Fort Worth Arena, Dickey's Arena. It's a new arena. Got to go out there for the practice session and check it out. Obviously, it's run strictly as a business platform and smoothie in so many different ways, to be just upfront with those that haven't participated in it. But it's amazing that they put this big machine together. And so I appreciate all the support you've given me, Ryan, over the years of trying to give people a different perspective that they obviously get from you giving them updates, from providing information, but giving me some insight that I can share with that. So that's appreciated. But now we're going to take the new text. We'll get in a little bit of this, and even maybe let Brian and AD ask you some test questions, as they say. But before that, we're going to get the poll rankings. So I want to see what y'all think about my poll updates before we get too far into this, because, I get excited about giving these updates. Top 5 teams, week 11. We'll close this out probably next week unless we see some major upsets. But with that being said, top 5. Now, this poll comes out on Tuesday. Obviously, we're unable to bring you a show outside our control. So please, we apologize to the lab listeners in terms of that. We're going to try to make sure you get your shows, because I got some texts from folks that were like, hey, I need my lab. I understand. We want to give it to you too. With that being said, we're going to get in here and give you these top 5 programs. This is before games that were played on Tuesday. So this does not include Texas Southern's win in that first 4. Obviously, it does not include also the Wednesday first 4 win by Howard on the women's side, nor does it include the loss by Norfolk State earlier today. So with that being said, or Alcorn's loss to Texas A&M, credit to them. They were tied at halftime, and they played the game without 2 players. One, is my understanding, was hurt, and the other one may be transferring or something like that. But they really fought hard against Texas A&M. And so kudos to Alcorn for representing in that. Obviously, you had Morgan State in what they used to call the CIT. Now they call it the tournament game there. They had a tough loss today, but it doesn't include those losses in terms of what's going on there. So let's get in it. When we talk about the top 5, in terms of women's poll, Chivalry's not dead. At number 5, because no team dropped out, so everybody stayed in the top 5. Alabama A&M Bulldogs did drop a spot as they lost the quarterfinals opening round game to Grambling. In terms of got it done, 15-14 is what they dropped to over the season. 13-5, but they concluded the season. 57 points, bringing us to number 4. Morgan State Bears on the women's side finished at 18-8, 11-3, 72 points. As they were pushing forward, had a really good game. last-minute basket by Norfolk State pushed them into the finals, and Norfolk State goes to number 3 as they are 17-11-11-3, 80 points. They move up 2 spots from 5, brings to number 2 Howard Bison, 20-9. Yes, 20 wins on the season, which meant that they have a share of the regular season, as you know, but they got the championship in terms of MEAC and got a little bounce back as they lost the heartbreaker last year to North Carolina A&T. So I was really excited for the Howard Bison women, but it showed out in the polls, and we can now talk about them getting their first 4 win in the tournament. So they'll actually improve to 21 season. What a magical run for them as they will play against South Carolina, which is a tough task, but we'll see how that goes. 81 points. They move up a spot from 3, bringing us to Jackson State Tigers, who have just got it done this weekend, beating everybody 23-6, 18-0 in terms of undefeated regular season, going through the tournament, really getting it done, and had some tough games in terms of matchups. Pine Bluff, one of the teams that played them close to close out the season, obviously against the rival Southern. That was a slugfest until late in that game. And then the Alabama State team, who's become one of the rivals that they played in the championship last year. So credit to Jackson State. They will play in that game against LSU. Talked about their seeding in terms of getting it done. 14 seed, best seed coming out of the SWAC thus far, one of the best in terms of HBCUs, again, other than when Hampton had that 13 seed a couple of years ago, if you would. Let me start with you, Ryan, since you the guest on here. What do you think of my women's top 5 poll rankings for week number 11?
Well, I'm not going to disagree. Honestly, great assessment. And you didn't include some of the first 4. I mean, like you said, Howard's success, so that could change some things. But who was number 1 again?
Jackson State Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. You go through the conference basically 21-0 when you include the postseason. So Howard was 2. And so I'm not even going to debate that. My younger days, I would try, but nah. Good job.
I appreciate that you wised up over the years, and you'll be welcome back on the show now that you got the answer right to the question. With that being said, let me go to you, Bryan. What are your thoughts in terms of my top 5 rankings on the women's side?
I think you pretty much went chalk with everything that we had. I will say Alabama State, though, probably deserves to be in the top 5 just on the strength of the fact that they got to the championship game. I see you have them sitting outside of your top 5 at 15. I think they were number 5 in our rankings, but I think it's something to be said. They were the 3 seed. They went 2 games further than Alabama A&M. So with that said, that's the only difference that I might get picked about. Everything else looked great.
Yeah, I can see that. I think you have a legitimate argument of making that case with Alabama, and they split in the regular season, so I can see that overall 15-15 record versus a 15-14, so the win percentage probably slightly better. But to your point, I can see that. AD Drew, you have the same thought process or different there?
Can you argue with perfection, Doc? I really want to know, how can you argue with perfection? And I'm not talking about the poll. I'm talking about Jackson State when it comes to this. I mean, it's hard. And now, since we've gotten that mandatory Jackson State thing out the way, and
out there, yeah.
I'm gonna echo with what Ryan and Bryan said. I'm supposed to make a bold prediction, Doc. Jackson State beats make it 16.
You stumbled just a minute there, so I want to make sure people get it.
He got sniped because he was trying to put that out
there.
Yeah,
they were trying to snipe you before
LSU
you said it out there. They were
out
trying to make you pull it back. So say it again. What were you going to say there?
If Jackson State beats LSU, I did put the if in front of that.
Gotcha.
They will make it to the Sweet 16.
Nice. I can see that. You're right. If they get past LSU, they can seriously make the run. Be the first time men's or women's since Division I play that you've seen a HBCU at the Division I level get to Sweet 16. Obviously, we've had national champions at the NCAA Division II level. We've had national champions at the NAIA level in terms of the men's, and seen teams in terms of women's Division II, if you would, get to championship level and one of them winning it as well. So be different for Division I. It'd be interesting to see that. Let me jump in here and give you the men's side of this, see if we can get maybe a little more active here. Dropping out on the men's side was Howard, and they're just getting votes. So top 5, North Carolina Central Eagles, 16-15, 8-5. They were not ranked, so as Howard drops out, Central drops back in, and I think that switches from the previous week. So they're kind of going back and forth. Be interesting to see the final polls and see how that shakes out. And number 4, Southern Jaguars, 17-14, 12-6, 74, 4th place. You're talking about a team that kind of slid but played so well over the long term of the season. Coach got accolades for Coach of the Year in terms of division. And there's question on whether he will be brought back because his contract ends. So it's not like he's getting fired, but there's question, are they going to renew his contract? So that's going to be fascinating when you see a team that is on the rise. Do you make that kind of change? Yes, obviously expectations. Losing to your rival, Grambling State, 3 straight games, including the tournament, certainly hurts in terms of the fans' eyes, but that's going to be a fascinating to keep your eyes on there. We already talked about the change of Alabama State, Mo Williams moving to Jackson State, so that job is open. So people are having interest in there. And then we obviously talked about now Texas Southern on the women's side, that's opening. So people are going to be fascinated, which brings us to Alcorn State Braves. 17-6, 14-4 overall, 82 points. Coach Bussey in his second year, probably making it challenging on all these new coaches in terms of what he was able to do. Fascinating. Will they be able to keep him? Will people try to sneak in and get him? Whether it's in the SWAC or outside of the SWAC, something to keep your eyes on. Chatter going around. And number 2, Texas Southern University Tigers, 18-12, 13-5. 1 first place vote, 93 points. Moving up from the 3 spot, they're at number 2. Can they chase down Norfolk State? That is 24-6, 12-2. 9 first place votes, 99 points. Wood playing in the first 4. Does that make a difference? I guess it'll depend on what Texas Southern does, maybe with Kansas tonight. See if they can get enough momentum to jump up. With that, let me go back around the framework, and I'm going to start with AD Drew on this one and see what he thinks in terms of the top 5 rankings on the men's side.
I just want to know, when your next poll comes out, Doc, will Maryland Eastern Shore be able to get in playing in whatever postseason basketball tournament that they got into with the, I believe it 11-15 record or whatever it was in one of those lower level postseason basketball tournament. You know, basketball is starting to turn into college football where everybody gets a bowl invite. Looks like everybody's getting a basketball invite right now. So that's the only question. I can't really argue with your 5. I got to throw some shade somewhere. Yeah. Can Maryland Eastern Shore get into your top 5 based on this run that they're going to make in whatever postseason tournament this
unfortunately,
Insider.com or whatever it's called.
Right. Unfortunately, they already ended that run. They lost, I think, today in terms of that. So, no, the answer is no. But I do like the way that you gave them some love. And I guess that's what you think about is the chance to do postseason play, additional practices. Maybe you can go on a run. But it was not to be. Fascinating as you talk about what basketball is turning into, but one to keep your eyes on. But I will say this. People forget 4 years ago, before COVID, literally, when Prairie View defeated Texas Southern, there was a decision to be made in a basketball program under the leadership of VP of Athletics, Kevin Granger, decided, yes, and the president, that we were going to go on this CIT at the time was the name of the tournament. They made it to the final 4 of that tournament, won 3 games. They played in New Orleans on the road, won that game. They played Texas Pan American, won that game. Then they went up to ULM, Monroe, and won that game, and then went up to Wisconsin. In 3 of those games, they lost in overtime, and they lost a nail-biter to Green Bay, I think it was, in terms of that basketball program. And it kind of set them up in terms of expectation and what this program does and how much they believe in basketball and saying that every game matters in terms of that. And it gave them a chance to put up different banners that recognizes and say, hey, we are a basketball program, and every opportunity we can to show that we can play basketball at Texas Southern University, they do it. And look what it's turned around in terms of 2 straight tournaments. There's a couple of players on those teams that get some time that played in that, and they talk about it. And now not only they gotten 2 straight tournament championships, now they got 2 first 4 wins. So fascinating to wonder how much that attributed to that. Let me go to Bryan, talk a little bit too much, but I want to get your thoughts in terms of top 5. I thought it was important to kind of tie that in because Professor Drew made a good point in terms of, do you play in these games or not? Because it's my understanding the Southern got an invite, and they turned it down.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up about Southern getting the invitation. Some talk about why Southern did that. There's some rumors out there. I don't know what is final and what is not as to why Southern did not choose to go. But I think that's a miss by Southern. But I understand if everything holds up, why they didn't go. And so, with that said, the only thing in terms of the top 5, I'd look at that number 5, North Carolina Central. I don't recall, Drew, who was our number 5? I don't think North Carolina Central was in our top 5, were they?
I don't think so. I don't have it in front of me. I'm not on my laptop, so I don't.
Probably was Howard, huh?
5.
Yes, it was Howard.
Right outside, it was probably Howard.
It was.
Yeah, I think it was Howard. I think we had a flip.
Yeah, so I mean, but you got the top 4. It is what it is. So it's funny how the data always ends up coming out, pretty much the same way as the people in the end. Even though the people can go out to left field sometimes, they end up coming back in sync with the data in the end. I know Mike would be happy about that.
Yeah, good shout out to Mike. Shout out to Charles Bishop as well, as he's out on assignment, probably getting prepared to make sure he's going to make that road trip down to Baton Rouge. And as Drew said, if they find a way to get it done, he might be on the road for the next couple of weekends because they may find a way to get to the Sweet 16, making it through this round. That would be sweet to watch and talk about next week. Let me go to Ryan McGinty and see what he says about the top 5 poll rankings in his frame.
No change outside of it. It's funny. It's kind of a balanced poll. I guess this year the MEAC, with the deletion of some schools, comparing that to the SWAC as a whole. I don't, maybe is the SWAC stronger, or is Norfolk's success based mainly on strong non-conference and taking advantage of the MEAC? That's the only thing I would say. But Norfolk did well, got a 16 seed, and had to play themselves in, so I'm not going to debate that one also.
Right. I do think that, to your point, though, I think you can argue that the SWAC was a deeper conference. But the way, kind of like what you see on the women's side with Jackson State, just going through there, in a lot of ways, Norfolk State did that, adding the fact that they had a really good non-conference schedule that really buffered what they did in the conference and took away the fact that they had those 2 losses, one a really close one on the road in North Carolina Central, why I think they find a way up in the poll versus Howard that had good wins but had some very bad losses as well. So it's fascinating when you see that. I guess the question I have before we kind of close up, all of you all, what about the point differential? Do you think that Norfolk State should have the 9 first place votes, or do you believe that maybe Texas Southern should get some more votes? And remember, this came out before the first 4 win on Tuesday night and the tough loss that Norfolk State had today. Obviously, we will find out tonight in terms of what Texas Southern does from Kansas, in terms of whether they can get it done or keep it close, or how long they can even keep it close, or all things that can play in the variables. At this point, do you think that the first place votes should be different in terms of the poll rankings? Starting with you, 80 Drew, and then I'll come to you, Bryan, and let Ryan close it out. Go ahead.
When we did our computer ranking on Sunday, Doc, there was a 1-point differential between Norfolk State and Texas Southern. And actually, it was less than a point when you actually look at the numbers out to about 2 or 3 digits beyond the decimal point. It was less than 1 point. And part of that is we factor out those 3 non-Division I games that Norfolk had on their record in non-conference. So our computer ranking factors those out. We only factor Division I games in. And because of that, Norfolk had a weaker strength of schedule than Texas Southern. And that's what Texas Southern was able to make up the difference in our computer ranking was their strength of schedule. Their strength of schedule was middle of the road, where Norfolk's was down at the bottom of Division I. I think there may have only been, if they weren't the bottom, there may have been one team that had a weaker strength of schedule than Norfolk State. Now, like you said, Norfolk took advantage of that weak schedule. They handled their business. You can only beat the teams that are on your schedule, and Norfolk did that better than most teams did this year, especially in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. So yes, I think those two teams should be closer together because the SWAC this year is the basketball conference. Norfolk may be the basketball team, but the SWAC is the basketball conference for 2021-2022.
Woo, who would have thought that? Bryan, what are your thoughts?
Here's my, as I sit and think about it, my argument, the counter to whether the SWAC was really the basketball conference or not, is the 7 seed from the MEAC knocked off the 2 seed and the 3 seed, made it to the finals, kind of showing a little bit of the depth of that conference, and so who was the 7th seed in the SWAC?
Jackson State.
Jackson State wouldn't get to the finals. One, they had to go to Texas Southern, but they wouldn't have got past. So maybe the 8th seed, we hinted at maybe the 8th seed could, but really when you think about it,
should have. Fairview should have beaten Alcorn.
Okay, I'll give you that because
they did go to OT. They should have beat them before it went to OT. Good point.
But really, what's crazy is we thought there was really 6 teams. Really, there was 4 teams. There was really 4 teams that could have won that conference, and there was the 1, 2, 3 seed and the 8 seed. And that was really everybody else was kind of there for show and looked good going in, but really it was really a 4-team league at the end. When I really think back about it, it was really 4 teams. So I would argue that possibly the MEAC overall might have been the tougher or better league, but I mean that's just based on what we see here at the end.
I like the argument that you put on the table. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but I do think it's plausible. So the fact that you brought on the table, fascinating. Maybe next year we'll see some of these matchups in the non-conference race. Obviously, you have these folks that are putting some of these HBCU basketball classics together. So hopefully we'll get some of these top teams that are perennial, been top teams, and you'll see some of these matchups because it'll be fascinating to see them playing in and then later on in the season to see kind of how it shakes out. We'll give you the last parting word here pretty much, Bryan. What are your thoughts in terms of the poll ranking as we start to close down the show?
I'm laughing what Bryan said. The first round against TSU and Jackson State, 54-50. And that was a hard-fought game that TSU won. Grambling was the 6th seed, knocked off Southern, the 3 seed. And really, all the SWAC games were close to 4-5. Alabama A&M and FAM was close. And then Alcorn and Prairie View, I mean, all I'm going to say is a team in purple should have won that game. And you know how y'all want to determine that's it. But I just think this year more depth. It's just, and not because I was in it or whatever. I just think the SWAC had more depth this year and it reflected in the tournament because Grambling swept Southern all 3 times. And Grambling finished 6th. And Southern finished, was projected to finish first toward the end, but then slipped. But I just think this year, maybe the SWAC finally shared that moniker for football conference and basketball is here to stay.
And to your point, going into the last weekend, 11 of the 12 teams in the SWAC were still in the race to get a tournament, to get into the tournament.
Yeah, good point. Great point. I'm glad you jumped in and shared that because that was fascinating that it literally went down to the wire in terms of who would get in the tournament as the SWAC has the 12 members, obviously, but only takes the top 8 teams, and the MEAC has 8 members. And so it takes all 8 members in terms of seeding for a 3-round tournament. Fascinating discussion. I have watched SWAC basketball for many years. I've never seen the conference as competitive as this in terms over the last 20-some years. Obviously, some of my research goes back and talks about some of those legendary teams and legendary depth of the league that were very competitive going in some of these match boxes where you really had to deal with fan bases that could make a home court advantage really something to fear in regards of a road team coming in there and trying to play in a hostile environment. So it's fascinating. So it'll be something to keep up with the next couple of years to see if this was just a one-year type of situation, or is there more things to follow in terms of what's going on in the SWAC, and then obviously in the MEAC, watching the MEAC basketball to see where they're going to turn around what's going on there in the years. And that also includes the other 3 HBCU conferences, the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, where them bringing in expansion and new members there. That's going to be kind of fascinating to see. Wiley College shifts over to GCAC. What does that look like? Obviously, we've seen Xavier in the Red River Athletic Conference, both on the men's and women. It looks like there'll be a thrust in terms of what that looks like. So that's fascinating. SIC heading in a different direction will be intriguing to see where the momentum and the depth of that conference as they're bringing in some new members with Edward Waters, Allen, to see what that looks like over the next year. So we see this conference turning. And then obviously you have the granddaddy of them all, the CIAA, that is truly in terms of basketball interest of what they did in Baltimore. Fascinating tournament, a lot of fan fest, what that looks like. So it's going to be interesting to see as we quickly turn and go to the diamond, whether that's softball, baseball. Throw some love out there for North Carolina A&T as they were second place in terms of indoor track. And it came down to this for folks that didn't read that or didn't as close. They actually had a chance to get the national championship against Texas as it came down to the 4x4, which they have been notorious for, but whatever reason, they didn't run that very well. If was the fifth, we'll know how that goes. If Texas had a failed past 3 and they had won the 4x4, they would have actually won the indoor championship. As it was to be, they were way down there, 12-13, and Texas actually won the 4x4. So they won the championship going away a little bit in terms of 40-plus points to 30. But that's the best finish that you've seen at HBCU at the Division I level. Very important to put that in there, not to throw shades at those national NIA HBCU programs, those Division II men's and women's national championships. But in terms of the Division I program, A&T finished the best finish. The last ones I think you had back in the 80s and 70s, you had some 7th, 8th place type finishes in terms of what that looks like. So that was fascinating. Kudos to Dr. Roderick Holmes, who is a track aficionado, and he was fascinating. So he shared this with me. The highest finish I could find are Jackson State, which was tied for 8th in 1983. Charles Bishop, I'm sure he'll love that shout out when he checks out the show. Staying in Mississippi Valley State had a 9th place finish in 1982. You had a Kentucky State and Southern finished tied for 7th in 1965. Grambling women had a 5th place finish in 1985, according to the U.S. Track and Field Association there. So just wanted to give some love there. That'll do it for the show. We got to get ready to get out of here and get Ryan to make sure he can take care of some business there. But good luck for the Tigers. Appreciate Bryan for showing up. Glad to see that you didn't sneak in a beer, but now you can go enjoy the games and do the drinking as you want. AD, Drew, again, thank you for taking a moment away, and hopefully we gave you a little bit. But condolences and prayers in your time of need and your bereavement. Please stay strong and let us know that all the lab listeners are with you. Appreciate you finding a way to give us some love because your comments were needed and very thoughtful today. With that, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. Obviously, guesting, showing us some love today was the gentleman of Sports Rap. Check them out on Sunday and Wednesday, that is Bryan and AD. And we have none other than Ryan McGinty, the Sports Information Director at Texas Southern University, one of the founders of the show. Reason why you have us here with Charles and Mike is because the work that he put in at the very beginning. Download my JBN, my BCSN, in terms of making sure you get the love in the app. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Ville's Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time right here. We'll be back in the fold next week. Checking us out. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattCavil. Again, that's DrKenyattCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. Have some good dialogue going on there, so check me out on Twitter. Keep it coming. Facebook, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Bryan.
Of course.
AD.
Lecture.
Ryan.
Yes, let's go.